Hey, ladies. I just wanted to give you a visual on modifications for the yoga. So I think it's easier if somebody actually shows you. So your basic, let's just take your basic yoga flow, your sun salutation. It would go, you'd be at the top of the mat, and you'd go all the way up, inhale, come down. Right here, if you have wrist issues, you're gonna have a problem. So you would go up, right? So normally I would be down like this, monkey pose. So for wrist issues, you can just hang. You could even put your palms the other way. You just want to lengthen the back. That's the key here. It doesn't really matter what you do with your arms. You could even pull your arms back, you know. Folding forward. Now here's where it gets tricky. Normally you would put your hands down and walk or jump back to a plank position. So obviously this is out of the question if you have serious wrist issues. So what you would do instead would be, from monkey pose, from your monkey wherever you are, you would probably want to use your fists to come down onto your knees, then onto your elbows, then you can come into your, upward or downward facing, and we go, upward facing dog would be like that, or possibly, belly down, and then downward facing dog, you would stay on your elbows. Take a deep breath, and then you'd have to take your knees down, walk your hands back, pressing your fists down, coming back up. So the whole flow, I'll show you the whole flow the way it would be done without modifications, and then I'll show you the modifications so you can kind of integrate where you would be doing that. So the whole flow goes inhale, exhale, monkey pose lift, chaturanga step back, inhale up dog, exhale down dog, right? So right there you see there's a lot of wrist action in just your basic vinyasa flow. So you would modify this by inhale, exhale, monkey, take it down to chaturanga. You could do, I think this might not work. I think that's too hard, so you might have to skip the chaturanga, or just come down. Chaturanga would be this. Maybe drop the hips, lift the heart, upward facing dog, and then downward facing dog. So it might not be as flowy at first, because I think the tricky part is going to be coming up, down, monkey, and then coming down onto the elbows for chaturanga, which would be just this, up dog, down dog, which, by the way, is also fairly strenuous on the shoulders. Okay, so among the other poses that are classic that would need wrist modification is a triangle. So a triangle pose, you usually come into it from warrior one. So you're in warrior one here, lift, come into warrior two, right, straighten this, and then come down. And so often what people do is they brace onto their calf here. I don't like that because I don't think it helps the core. It doesn't help to strengthen anything. You gotta hold yourself up, so you can actually take the wrist out. But if you're really, having issues with balance, with core, and then with wrist stuff, just come up, right? So let's see if I can give you a better visual on that. Normally, right, I can come, it's kind of funny. Normally I can come down, right? I can come all the way down, my feet are not wide enough, down to here for my triangle, and my fingertips are tented, and I'm pushing down into the mat. And then what I do is I try to lift off a little bit, so I'm using all core to hold myself up, right? So you can also put one hand inside, right below the knee, and just kind of use that as a support. Notice there's no weight on the wrist. Or, since this takes a lot of core work, you just don't come down that far. This is a triangle right here. You just want to stay open here to here. Legs wide, heart up, no wrist issues. Okay. There are so many, unfortunately, there are so many poses where, like any arm balance, I think is probably going to be too challenging. For example, I'm not very good at crow, but crow is like all wrists and shoulders. So, you know, here you are. The instructor calls out crow. What are you going to do? I mean, you can't, you know, you're right here, and then you're going to lift onto your wrist. Yeah, I don't think so, right? So instead of crow, you would come into a prayer squat. That's an option. The key to prayer squat, you just have to keep your heels down. So my heels come down because I'm pretty loose in the hips. If your heels don't come down, but you still want to modify, you roll up your mat. Right, so you roll up your mat to give yourself a little bit of height. That brings your heels up. The key is the heels should be on the mat and the toes off. And then once you have a little bit of height, it's usually a little bit easier. So that's your modification for crow. It's not really a crow, it's a prayer squat. But you know, there's just no way that that's accessible if you hello and we have company. And we have a lot of wrist issues too because I've been doing this for so long. So long story short, something like lizard. Lizard is actually pretty good because you can come down, like a lot of people stay up here and that's a lot of pressure on the wrists. But trusty block, elbow, elbow, now you get a nice hip opener, no problem with the wrist, right? Tripod headstand I think is out because there's really no way to modify that. You know, you're not going to be tripod headstand. You're here, your head comes down and your feet lift up. Forget it. So, I mean, those are the basics. A lot of the twists are accessible because you're not putting any pressure on the wrist. It's basically arm balances, and you're in a gentle practice, you're not going to be doing a lot of arm balances. And I think the key is to remember anything that requires a right angle at the wrist, you're going to make it a right angle at the elbow. Maybe up, maybe down, depending. And then you can also, I was looking at YouTube yesterday, there's a couple of good stretches for the wrists, because I have a lot of wrist issues in the morning especially, so, you know, this one, you've probably seen this one, you know, you kind of hold your hand, pull your elbows out, and then twist up. Woo. I always find if I do that before yoga class starts, I can get into a back bend a little bit more easily. All right, well, I wanted to just give you a couple of visuals that might help you in a practice. You know, what I would do is I would do some YouTube yoga. I mean, you can't go to class, well, maybe in South Carolina you can, but in New York you can't yet. And then when you see the instructor do something that you need to modify, then you can take your time to modify so you get used to it. That way when or if you end up going to a class, you can just do it automatically. And shame on the instructor that doesn't modify, that doesn't show you modifications. That's just bad teaching. All right, have a great day, ladies. I hope to see you soon. Bye.